Hey there, I'm Diane Prince from RA360, and today I get to introduce you in our member spotlight to Tyler Kastelberg. Tyler is the impressive founder and CEO of Bullpen. Bullpen provides staffing and recruiting to the commercial real estate industry. Before getting into recruiting and staffing, Tyler worked in corporate finance with GE and investment banking with Raymond James. He was born and raised in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. He has a degree in industrial and systems engineering from Virginia Tech. Tyler lives in San Francisco with his wife and two kids. And I know you're going to find this member spotlight just as inspiring as I did. Tyler is totally killing it at Bullpen, and I can't wait for you to hear his story. Hey, here I am with Tyler Kastelberg, and super excited to be here with you, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks. This is fun.
Yeah, this is our first member spotlight from RA360. So we'll just dive right in and would love to get to know about your business. And so in that vein, why don't we just dive right in and introduce yourself and share a bit about your business?
Yeah, definitely. I'm Tyler Kastelberg, was raised on the East Coast outside of the Richmond area in Virginia. I ended up out here on the West Coast after college, kind of like hopped around, was in Houston and then Atlanta, and then I'm now over in like SF. And so I have like two kids, been here for 8 or 9 years, which is just hard to believe.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up in the recruiting industry on accident. I mean, on sort of complete accident, and ended up like joining our actual group here as a function of, as I was like pivoting into recruiting, I didn't know anything about it. As you know, Diane, our kind of early calls were like,
Uh-huh.
what is RPO? And so I started in a more kind of banking role. And just ended up kind of burning out. I was always interested in entrepreneurship, and ended up as a like hobbyist investor in a few commercial real estate kind of projects on the East Coast. So, after iBanking, I told myself, hey, I'm pretty sure I could just invest in these like real estate kind of projects, either kind of flip homes or invest in kind of larger things and just like do that as my kind of full time. So I started doing that and ended up like helping out a few other investors. That kind of like turned into a more sort of consulting practice in which I was like overseeing just like projects on behalf of other investors. So you think like financial modeling of real estate, or maybe like marketing packages as we're doing, at a kind of fundraise on these real estate projects. So I did that for about a like year as a freelancer, as I was like trying to invest in projects on myself. And then kind of realized, hey, I'm a really kind of like poor investor. I ended up like buying this asset on the East Coast, and ended up like it was a train wreck. That's a long story if you're curious about it at some point. However, I ended up like putting up a little like website and saying, hey, I can help on your financial modeling. And I had people out of like LA asking if I could help, out of like New York, out of Houston, out of ATL. And so ended up like taking on these sort of project clients. And that kind of turned into a little sort of consulting practice. That then, as I was like honeymooning, I was like bottlenecking us and realized this is a train wreck of a business. And so um, ended up, I guess, like introducing our like high quality people on our team and our clients, and that kind of ended up like birthing an idea of like Bullpen, which
Mm.
is my business. Um, to sort of to help in this like hiring of people on on a kind of on this sort of project basis in the commercial real estate industry.
Mhm.
Um, and it kind of worked up through 2020 through 2020. Like three, our business had a huge expansionary period. We went from doing around like 60,000 a year to almost like $4 million in a year in that kind of 2-year period. It was a staffing kind of product, I'd say. In like hindsight, I was always sort of saw ourselves as this like tech company because it was a platform and such. However, it was a staffing product. Our clients approached us and said like, hey, I need help on a project. It could be like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even a full like year. It could be a person on, on maternity leave. And then our team would end up like choosing a person out of this, out of our kind of pool of talent, and then earn a percentage on the contract value. And that kind of worked until it didn't. In 2020, early last year, as interest rates ended up increasing, there was a huge like pause in real estate, and like valuations ended up kind of tanking, and there were a bunch of like layoffs, and all the project work pretty much stopped. And so we ended up like reinventing ourselves, which was highly painful. However, a lot of I'm going on and on about the kind of whole story. I hope this is okay.
You're answering all the questions. It's perfect.
Am I really? Oh no.
I'm going down. It's perfect. I love this story. I mean, it's the both
Okay.
kind of
Okay, cool.
evolution.
I'll go and then we can like touch on different questions. But
Perfect.
ended up like reinventing ourselves. Added on like full-time placements as a lot of our kind of older clients were asking about it. And then I've kind of like iterated our model into this like modified RPO, which is like how we operate today. So that's the whole kind of genesis of how we got here.
That's amazing. It's such a true entrepreneur story, and congratulations on your success and the way that the evolution of Bullpen and how you listen to your clients, and you also are working towards your own vision at the same time and evolving the business, I would say, based on those two kind of pillars, maybe. And so what can you explain what gap in the market you're filling? What kind of placements do you make, and what gap do you fill? What problem do you solve for your clients?
Yeah, for sure. So in the commercial real estate industry, there's a lot of like tiny operators, and I say like tiny kind of operators. There's a whole lot of companies with under 20 employees, and our kind of primary product in the early days, our kind of freelance products. It was that you have these these like projects, right? I'm over like downtown right now in SF, and there's all these like towers around me, and each of these like projects have like analysts on them and accountants and a bunch of project managers, and each of the projects, it has are over like two to I'd say like 4 years. And like hiring people on a true kind of full-time basis on those is just like risky, because you're always kind of like rolling them on the other projects. But if you could hire people on a part-time basis or on a fractional basis or just over a year or two on a contract, it was an appealing offering. And kind of like prior to having a bullpen in this industry, you would just end up like calling up like buddies and saying like, hey, I need a project manager. Do you have anyone? Our platform just almost sort of curated all those people in a single place.
Yeah.
And it was just a real easy kind of hiring process. Yeah. And so that was our real like thesis there. In this like modified RPO model, there are all these kind of tiny businesses, and like I don't think anyone under kind of 50 employees has like TA in their business. And so our kind of business model at this point of like helping on all of your hiring on a full-time basis, on your projects, on your freelancers, is just kind of like representing that there aren't individuals who are on a full-time basis as like TA interviewing people and acquiring talent. And so you can either like DIY as an entrepreneur and say like, hey, I'll just like do it all myself, or I'll use an agency. And our kind of modified RPO model is intended to be about an equal actual price of hiring a person in-house. So it's that kind of like bridge of like, hey, I need help. I don't have interest in adding kind of headcount on TA, and so we'll use Bullpen.
And you're based in Northern California in the San Francisco area, but you place people nationally?
Um, uh, yes. And so our kind of headquarters is in SF. I have like team members all over the country though. Um, and our kind of like primary markets are your big like tier one markets in real estate. And so out of like LA on the West Coast, out of like NYC on the East Coast, is where just a lot of our customers are.
Yeah, that's awesome. So anyone listening to this who isn't commercial real estate needs to contact you, and then
I love that. Please do that.
right. And who, speaking of that, like who, describe your ideal client.
Yeah. And so I'd say anyone who is in like private equity and real estate, or is a investor or an actual builder in real estate. If you're doing any projects involving any kind of building as well. I mean, our whole focus is on the real estate industry. I'd say a place in which our business isn't as helpful is with like brokers. I think that if you're on the brokerage side and like hiring actual like producers and brokers, that's a whole other kind of beast, and I can introduce to people. However, that isn't our niche. It's any of your like headquarters investor roles, and so you think like acquisitions or asset management or accounting or investor relations, all the way to like property managers at property. I've got a search right now that is a property is a community manager role at a trailer park in a town of 2,000 people. So like, anything out of like headquarters, out of NYC to out in like backwoods, like Georgia, we do a lot of different placements.
Love it. I lived in a trailer park in Malibu. I don't know if I ever told you that, but
It's incredible in Malibu though. It's like yeah, that's like, all right.
it is a little bit different there.
Yeah.
And then anybody who is or owns a recruiting agency or staffing agency or is thinking about it, this is such a great story about niche, because you dug into what you knew and then you figured out the problem to solve. And it's such a good story about how niches exist. And sometimes people are like, well, tell me what niche to do, or they're, looking at it, but you figured it out by piecing together things that you knew and then seeing where there was a gap in the market. And that's such a good example.
And the other thing is like I think the problem in this industry of recruiting is there's a huge amount of competition. And so, if you are interested in actually charging over like 20% and not like undercutting on price, it takes having like expertise and offering other kind of like value outside of like headhunting. And so if you have expertise in insert any industry niche and are able to offer input, on how the actual sort of typical like org chart is, in our case, at a real estate investment, operation, or, a big sort of question mark in this industry is if like property management ought to be like hired on your team or all like outsourced. And to have an opinion on that and offer kind of value and a choice like that is how you are able to actually charge the actual premium prices in recruiting. I think
You really have a value add.
Mhm.
And so what unique challenge, like what is one unique challenge that you have faced now as a new recruiting agency owner, as your business evolved into recruiting?
Yeah. This is gonna go to a little bit of a tangent, but I promise I'll bring it all the way around. So there's a whole lot of entrepreneurs in recruiting, and there's a whole lot of like businesses that stay, ultra kind of tiny in recruiting, and it isn't a sort of a sort of function of a person's like lack of expertise in recruiting. There's a bunch of awesome recruiters who are stellar at identifying high quality people.
Mhm.
However, it's an issue of like pricing in the business model, or an issue of like how they've architected on their team, or all these various different things. And so I spent a whole lot of energy early on understanding how like pros are doing it. The huge like publicly traded companies, right? You have RHF, Robert Half, you have Kelly Service. I mean, there's all these huge firms, and just understanding how are the pros doing it, and
Mhm.
then if I'm interested in ending up in, as a really kind of a huge operation, which I am, how do we sort of get there? And
Mhm.
I think that journey of like research, it was like highly important early on, because it then kind of um, informs how I've like priced our services, how
Mhm.
I end up hiring people, how we do our contracts, and that kind of stuff. Is that an answer to your question? I think.
Yeah, yeah, I've observed that too in working together, and I really admire how you're inquisitive and looking at what multinationals are doing, for example, and then also figuring out what makes sense, like knowing what makes sense from your actual doing the business, and then putting that all together and then evolving. I mean, it's really inspirational. Um, and okay, let's see. How do you approach building strong relationships with your clients and candidates?
Yeah, so I do not think that I'm stellar at either of those.
Okay. Okay.
And that's kind of, I think it's been intentional. And so I've kind of realized that if I only do like sales, and then I kind of like own all our clients and those like personal connections,
Mhm.
then I end up like bottlenecking us a little bit. And if I do all our recruiting, that probably isn't the highest like kind of like highest ROI activity that I'm able to be doing. And so instead, I've put a whole lot of energy um, into just like hiring like high quality people on each like half of our team. I
Mhm.
know that you have told me in the past in our training sessions that it's important to still kind of like own the personal connections with our clients,
Mhm.
because if a person like leaves and ends up like taking like half your book of business, that'd be a huge problem. I totally agree with you, and that is a big risk that I currently, I think, have.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to figure out how to kind of, I just navigate that. However, yeah, I don't think I'm strong at either of those things. However, I am investing a whole lot of energy in our team and like holding on to really high quality people.
Yeah, yeah. And how do and yeah, and that is always a challenge, because in order to scale, you don't want to be just just the person,
Totally.
right? So yeah, so I think weighing that risk,
Mm.
and having really good people. But you mentioned your people, and you have exceptional people. How have you been able to attract top talent to Bullpen?
It's kind of it's been a bunch of hard knocks, honestly. It's sort of comical as a recruiting business. At times it it is it's it's hardest to actually sort of hire um on your on, in your own actual team over all your clients' teams. And I lost your question. What
I
was
asked
it again, yeah.
I asked about your team because you have a stellar team, and how are you able to attract? Because it is like you identified, it is typically
Right.
harder. I heard this like years ago that it's harder for recruiters typically to hire for themselves because we're so used to like selling people, like
Yeah.
their attributes instead of being critical. But
Yeah.
how have you been able to attract top talent who are working inside of Bullpen? I'm so sorry. I said
Hey,
Bullpen.
if if I owned Bull, Bullhorn, that'd be a great story in here. But yeah, I don't.
And I knew him. I knew him when he was about at your stage. We were one of the first.
Really?
Yeah, we were one of the
Oh,
first
cool.
Bullhorn clients. So like Art Pop, the CEO, like flew out to
That's
Glendale to
great.
work with us. And yeah. So
Yeah, anyways, so on the hiring side, on our production side, which is like sales, I have had training on that like half our business over a few years now, and we ended up like hiring people out of our kind of coaches and our training programs
Mhm.
kind of like ecosystem. I think hiring producers is extremely difficult. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I think you just have to be sort of like clear at the start of like, here's the first, in our first like 3 months, you have XYZ, kind of like operating goals. If you end up like hitting them, that's stellar. And that's, in your, kind of like here. And if you end up like missing them, then like you have to go. I think that's been extremely difficult. Um,
Mhm.
and important. And I think with like production, I think it is about kind of hiring people who are highly like motivated. I think like financially too is important. I think if you end up like hiring people who are highly motivated, uh, for things outside of like money, it's honestly just like hard to be successful in this business, which kind of sounds like harsh, but it's true.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
on the recruiting side, I think that has been very tricky because I hire um, two sorts of people. Either a person who has a whole lot of experience and there isn't a lot of real estate experience though, like they're a really outstanding kind of like agency recruiter in other industries like PE, but not real estate, or a person who isn't as experienced, however, has that kind of real estate, I guess, background. Um, how we in how we end up like hiring each like half of the business though is on these on these sort of commission plans that is a mix of like base and bonus. And I think on each like half, it has to be a person who has all their own kind of personal like dreams, and and you can sort of like paint a picture of, if you end up here and are working here, it is kind of possible to achieve your own kind of personal aspirations and dreams.
Mhm. Yeah.
I spend a whole lot of my time interviewing people, to be on our actual headquarters team. I think that's a thing I spend about half my time on every week. And yeah, it's really important. It's hard,
Yeah, that's smart because you're people, right? That's in a service business. That's
especially in this business. Yeah, it's all about the people.
yeah. I know a lot of people here say like they have a mediocre team, but they want an exceptional business. It just doesn't work that way. Um,
Yeah, I don't think that's a viable thing in like any business, or especially in recruiting. Yeah.
yeah. And how do you stay updated with industry trends and where do you go to get guidance?
Yeah, I'm horrible at this. And so I ask you, Diane, or people in the group, honestly.
Yeah, I did that.
Um, However, yeah, here's your advertisement. If you're terrible at staying up to date, you join the group. Yeah, so I kind of approach things kind of like opposite of a lot of agencies and owners. I don't have any kind of background in recruiting. And so if I have a problem, I always, sort of try and approach it out of a first like principles, and so just asking, kind of like breaking it down and kind of solving it. Yeah, so to be honest with you, I don't really keep up with trends in the industry. I try to, if I end up like wrapped up in a trend, then I'm probably doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I would think.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and then the final stumper question. If you could recruit anyone from history or even from today, could it be a famous person or even a fictional character to work at Bullpen, who would it be and why?
So I am inclined to go like political with this one, but then I think I'll
Oh
be
no.
like lightning rod, so I can't do that. I think what is important is an ability to attract attention and like trust as a producer, especially. And I would say that if I was hiring a person on our team and I was recruiting them, the hardest individuals are the producers. They're also the highest like earners. They're the hardest to hire for. Like, and so I'll answer that question kind of in the context of a sales role here. I think it's important to be able to attract attention and like media and like, have like buddies and sort of personal connections. And so I think of individuals like Branson out of like Virgin. He was stellar at just like connecting individuals and
Yeah.
building trust in people.
Yeah.
Richard is outstanding. I don't actually know him personally. I know I said like Richard as if I know him. I don't know him. However,
Plus he has a cool island. You could do like company
Cool
retreat.
Island, you can like host your customers. So I think from those like personality traits, though, I think an ability to really sort of connect with people, and just stay kind of positive. I mean, this is a hard business, right? And so I think like mindset is so important.
Yes, totally. Well, Tyler, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be inspired by hearing this. And how can they get in touch with you? Either prospective clients or people that might be stellar people in your team, or candidates. How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so easiest way is on like LinkedIn, at Tyler Kastelberg. I think you'll kind of put it in the show
Put it
notes.
in there. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Cool.
Or email Tyler at bullpenre.com is the other easy way, but I think LinkedIn's probably your best bet.
Okay, and we'll put it all in the notes as well. And it's such a pleasure I feel so grateful and honored to work with you and be part of your journey. So I want to thank you for that. Your in your participation in the group and coaching. It's inspirational to get to work with you.
I appreciate that. I always end up like leaving our our actual chats, like thinking to myself, like, I think after this one I'll be kicked out. Like I think I'm booted because yeah, I am completely outside of the recruiting industry. I don't have any yeah, I'm pretty sure eventually I'll be kicked out. However, it's been an awesome ride so far.
I think it's really important to bring outside perspectives
Yeah.
I didn't do anything in recruiting except for I worked as a temp in college
Right.
before
Yeah.
I started. I think it's really, and I think there's so much we can learn from the startup world and getting other perspectives as, to bring creativity to to your agency. So I like watching you do that. So thank you so much, Tyler. It was amazing to talk to you. And yeah, we'll everybody will know how to get in touch with you.
Great.